All right. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. Another Wednesday night, right? Wednesday night live stream. We will be switching these to Tuesdays over the next couple of weeks due to the college football playoff rankings. But here with a Wednesday night live stream tonight, like we've been doing for the majority of the season. And we're so glad that you guys could join us tonight. Obviously, last night was a very important night for all of us, I think. Very impactful night. Very historic night. It was one, part of the reason that we didn't have a live stream last night, obviously, was so that we could witness everything that took place last night. And of course, what I'm talking about is the return of Maction. Talking about the return of Maction. Did you guys see that? Bowling Green looked pretty good. Miami, Ohio looked pretty good. So we were like, let's take time to watch those Maction games, and then we'll get back to the live stream on Wednesday. So, but we're very glad all of you could join us tonight. Ready to break down so much. We obviously didn't get to do a live stream last week. We're back here tonight to talk about what we saw in week 10, what's coming up in week 11. Obviously going to talk about the playoff rankings, the first ones of which were released yesterday at 6 o'clock, which is why we will be returning on to Tuesday night live streams next week so we can watch those rankings live with you next time. We can be here watching them as they come in, get our live reactions, get your live reactions, your live calls, everything in between. So going to be a very eventful rest of the month of November, very eventful rest of this week as we lead up to a massive week 11 with two huge SEC showdowns, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, and Ole Miss, massive impacts on the SEC title race as well as the college football playoff race. So we've got a lot to talk about there. We already put out our Alabama, LSU prediction video today. Georgia, Ole Miss will be tomorrow. And then we're actually going to do an extra video. We're going to do Colorado and Texas Tech for Friday because that's a really sneaky good game in the Big 12. So really, really looking forward to that. J-Dog, Brady Glassman, Scotty B, the Baylor King. So glad all of you guys are here. And everybody else that will be joining us, whether it's later tonight, watching the live stream later on tomorrow, watching it later tonight, watching it next week. Doesn't matter when you join, when you watch. We're glad that you're a part of it. We're glad you're a part of our GE Nation, one that we hope to continue to grow and one that we hope to continue to expand, just to continue to get to talk college football with you guys each and every day. It's truly a blessing. So we're really looking forward to growing, continue to grow, and continue to get better. We are back before we dive into things, we're back at the original GE HQ. Someone named it that a while ago, a couple years ago, and I really liked it because this is where it all began, right here at this table. And we're going to be here for the next couple of weeks. So the beautiful background with all the helmets and the pennants that you guys sent in, we won't be able to return to that till probably late December, actually. So bear with us. This is the background we're dealing with for the next couple of weeks for all of our videos and for all of our live streams. So trip down memory lane for me, maybe for some of you guys as well. But tonight we do have a lot to discuss, and we are going to break down those college football playoff rankings in depth. We're going to break them down in depth, kind of comparing them a little bit to what we put out for our GE Top 25 on Monday, showing you where we believe the committee got things right, also where the committee got things wrong. And of course, per usual, there were a lot of things they did get wrong. So we're going to spend a good amount of this first part of the show talking about that tonight, getting your thoughts and your comments on that, as well as offering up ours as well. So again, we're so glad all of you guys could join us today. A couple of housekeeping things per usual. We want to give a major shout out to our sponsor, Chris Gates Fitness. If you haven't signed up for his online training camp, I highly recommend you do so. Chris has got a great program going on over there. I'm sure he's a little bitter after that Pittsburgh loss. He's a Pittsburgh Panthers fan. I'm sure he's hurting after that SMU loss last week, but has some great stuff over there. Maybe went out and pumped some iron to blow off some steam after that blowout loss to the Mustangs. But got some great stuff going on over there. We appreciate everything he's doing for our channel. Also, highly recommend you check out our expert picks. We said it in our video yesterday that we are 23 away from our goal for the year. It's pretty dang close, guys. I mean, when you think about it, we are really close considering we've got like 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season left, plus conference championships, plus all of bowl season. And really, I will let this goal extend all the way through the Super Bowl because we do put out NFL picks. We will cover the NFL playoffs. We will cover the Super Bowl. So really, we've got till like February 9th to reach that goal. 23 in like 4 months. When you think about it, we can do this. We can do this. So sign up today. You'll get a massive shout out right here on the channel on the live stream. If you join our team today, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, whoever it wants to be. We want you to take advantage of it. and help us get to that goal. Remember, if we hit 100, 24-hour live stream right across the ticker there, right? That ESPN ticker, 24-hour live stream if we reach our goal. And I do believe we can hit that. I mean, look how close we are. So definitely be the man. Be the man. Sign up, join our team, and help us get one step closer, hopefully, tonight. Maybe we can get to 80 tonight. Maybe we can get 3 tonight, get us that nice whole number, and be 20% away with a lot of time left. We're going to be referencing that throughout the night. Double O'Neill, good to see you. Again, J-Dog, Scotty B, Brady Glassman, and everybody else that may be joining us later on. Let's not delay it. I want to go ahead and jump into it because this is what we would have been doing had we been able to have a live stream last night. We're going to go ahead and bring up the college football playoff rankings from yesterday. And I'm cheating a little bit. I didn't make my own graphic. So we went out and found some that were already made that we're going to pull up on the screen today. I will say this. I actually agree with a good portion of their rankings. Their top 6 looks like my top 6. Go back and watch our GE Top 25 video we put out on Monday. It's the exact same. We had Oregon at 1. We had Ohio State at 2, Georgia at 3, Miami at 4, Texas at 5, and Penn State at 6. That's exactly what we had on Monday. That's exactly what the committee did on Tuesday. They have Tennessee at 7. We had Tennessee at 10. They have Indiana at 8. We have Indiana at 9. They've got BYU at 9. We've got BYU at 8. So really only flipping BYU and Indiana on our rankings. They've got Notre Dame at 10. I've got Notre Dame at 7. So the Tennessee Notre Dame kind of flips. So really the top 10 for us is the exact same as the committee's top 10. Just a few things that are flipped between 7 and 10. Flip 7 and 10, flip 8 and 9. It looks exactly like our GE Top 25. So honestly, for the first time, I think in maybe the history of the playoff rankings, I'm not horribly upset with their top 10. I did have Alabama at 11. I had SMU at 12. They've got Boise at 12. I had Boise State at 13. They've got them at 12, so I only flipped there. I got A&M at 16, LSU at 17. Like, there aren't too many drastic differences. I got Ole Miss at 18. They've got them at 16. Iowa State at 17. I've got them at 14. So a couple of big drops there, here and there, but not horrendous. I've got Kansas State at 21. They got them at 19. So honestly, it's not the worst set of rankings I've ever seen, believe it or not. It really isn't. The argument that I'm seeing right now in the comments and the people that are on the show last night, a lot of people were arguing the 2 versus 3. Should Georgia be 2? Should Georgia be 3? And here's the thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because bottom line is based on, and we're going to show you what the playoff picture would look like if the season ended today. Georgia is the highest ranked SEC team right now. And they've got Texas beat by 2 spots. So if it was Texas at 2 and Georgia at 3, then yeah, you'd have maybe some arguments there. And that wouldn't make sense, obviously, because Georgia beat Texas. But to say, oh, Georgia, it doesn't matter because Georgia would still be the 2 seed. That's how this works. That's how the system's going to work. So saying Ohio State's 2 and Georgia's 3, who cares? Because guess what? If the seeding happened, Oregon would be the number 1 seed and Georgia would be the 2 seed. They would both get the bye week. Even if Georgia was number 2 in these rankings, they'd still be the 2 seed, so it wouldn't matter. So we're really arguing over things that are pointless. The only thing that where this argument would apply was if another SEC team was ahead of Georgia, and then that's where it would play a big role. And again, those are ultimately going to be decided when the conference championships are played, right? So right now it's kind of a moot point. Those things will really begin to take shape once the championships are set and once those games are played. I had Ohio State over Georgia because similar to believe it or not, to what the playoff committee's reasoning was. Ohio State's lone loss this year was by 1 point on the road to Oregon. And a loss is a loss. There's no doubt about that. A loss is a loss. But Ohio State, you could argue, probably should have won that game in the final seconds had it not been for Dan Lanning's brilliance with the 12 men on the field call, which was a very genius coaching call. And had it not been for Will Howard's poor clock management, Ohio State probably gets a field goal and wins the game. Georgia, on the other hand, yes, their only loss was on the road to Alabama and by 1 possession as well. But obviously that first half maybe was lingering in the committee's mind. So you go one of 2 ways. The first half looked really bad. Second half was good. But also I think we were all underwhelmed with Georgia this last weekend. Playing Florida, that got down to their third string quarterback within the first quarter. DJ Lagway gets hurt. Georgia probably should have run away with that game, and they didn't. It was a one-possession game late in the fourth quarter before they got that really impressive interception, added that late touchdown to win by 14. Didn't even cover in that game. So I think that's what it was. Ohio State last week beats Penn State on the road, overcomes a 10-point deficit, gets the job done. A fantastic defensive performance. Georgia didn't look that great as a 16-point favorite against their big-time rival against a third-string quarterback. So obviously you have to look at the entire body of work. Both those teams have a very impressive win on their resume. Ohio State just beat Penn State. Georgia went on the road and beat Texas. So two very impressive road victories for both of those teams. I don't see an issue with Ohio State being where they are right now. And again, in the long run, it wouldn't matter. It simply wouldn't matter because Georgia would still get that number 2 seed in the rankings. So that's just how it would work. So that's the argument there. I have no issue with it. Miami at 4 makes sense. Texas at 5 makes sense. Penn State at 6. Some people said Penn State shouldn't be 6. I disagree. They were playing really, really, really good football and were a couple of crazy plays away from beating Ohio State. And they would probably be the number 2 team in the country right now. Maybe even number 1, although I wouldn't think so. I think Oregon would still hold that spot. If Penn State doesn't throw that crazy interception at the in the corner of the end zone at the end of the first half, which wasn't even Drew Aller's fault. It was just a wild ricochet. Maybe they win that game. If they don't get stuffed 4 times at the goal line, they probably win that game. I know that would have tied the game up regardless. So Penn State's still a dang good football team. And unlike other years, they with this 12-team format, they're still very much alive for the college football playoff. Like if this was still a 4-team format, Penn State's loss to Ohio State would have practically ended their season, especially with how well Oregon and the Buckeyes are playing right now. But now that it's 12 teams, they still have tons to play for. Hopefully, James Franklin can keep his team focused, ready for Washington this Saturday and for the rest of the season, which is a pretty favorable schedule for the Indy Lions. They might not make the Big Ten championship game, but they should still make the college football playoff. So a lot to play for remaining for Penn State, unlike other years had they lost this game. Tennessee, I don't like as high as number 7. They've been rather underwhelming the last few weeks. They've got a bad loss on the road to Arkansas. Yes, I know Arkansas has a winning record. I mean, kudos to them, I guess, are 5-4. But still a bad loss to the Razorbacks. A game against Alabama that if you watch them play Alabama, you realize they should have lost to again, a win's a win, a loss a loss. I mean, you can play the metrics all you want, but if you watch that game, Tennessee did not look good. And that was really more so of a game of Alabama shooting themselves in the foot more so than it was Tennessee beating Alabama, if that makes sense. So you had the loss to Arkansas. You've got the win over Alabama, which is a top 11 team. But again, you look at it a little bit deeper. Very underwhelming, kind of similar to Georgia. Underwhelming this last week against a bad Kentucky team. Tennessee at home at night with the black uniforms, and you only win by 10, didn't pull away till late. Not impressed by that at all. I would have Indiana above Tennessee. I would have BYU above Tennessee. Absolutely. Both Indiana and BYU, both undefeated. I know their schedule's not nearly as difficult, and some of their wins not nearly maybe as good as that of Tennessee's, but still would put them both above the Volunteers. Again, I have Tennessee at number 10, behind Indiana at number 9, and BYU at number 8. And then Notre Dame, rounding out this top 10, some deep analysis here, I guess is getting punished still slightly for the loss against Northern Illinois, and rightfully so. It's a really, really bad loss. But Fighting Irish still have a lot of good wins on their resume. If you look at the schedule or the rankings right now, they've beat Texas A&M, who's number 14. They beat them by 10 in College Station, by the way. They have a win over Louisville in South Bend, which is pretty impressive. And so that's it right now. They've got 2 top 25 victories. They did beat Navy a couple weeks ago by 37 points, which is pretty impressive. They've still got opportunity to beat Army, who I don't see losing anytime soon. So that could be a top 25 team when they play them. So opportunity is still there for Notre Dame, who's playing pretty dang good football right now. So I think they're worthy of a top 10 spot, maybe a little bit higher, but I'm not opposed to them being where they are. Not opposed to really 11 through 13. Again, the only thing I'd flip would be SMU over Boise State, just because SMU's played tougher teams and has a better strength of schedule and probably better wins on their resume than Boise State. I mean, I know Boise's got the win over Washington State in blowout fashion, which is good, But SMU also has a blowout victory over Pittsburgh, who, according to these committee members, is ranked higher than Washington State. So SMU's only loss is to BYU. Boise State's only loss is to Oregon, both by the same margin, by the way. A field goal for Boise State, a field goal for SMU. So, again, it doesn't play that big of a role, I guess, because Boise is a group of 5 team. So that's the other thing here, right? Like, this isn't a matter of like, well, because SMU is behind Boise State, they would miss out on the college football playoff. That's not true, because Boise's guaranteed at this rate. Boise would be guaranteed. It's an automatic bid. It's the same as a conference champion. SMU is going to be that at large. Boise's not an at large. SMU's not an at large. It's, you know what I'm saying? Like, Boise's guaranteed that spot. They are a lock if they can continue to win. The only other group of 5 team that can challenge them right now is Army, and the committee has them ranked 25th. So it would take an astronomical turn for Boise State to still miss out on the playoff. Now, granted, they've got to win the conference, typically, right? They got to be the highest ranked group of 5 champion. So if Boise State were to run the table but then lose in the Mountain West Championship to like UNLV or something, then that could open the door for Army, even though Army could be lower ranked than Boise State. So a lot of things could go into factor there. But there's 13 spots that separate the 2 top group of 5 teams in these rankings, if you don't include Washington State. And Boise is playing really, really good ball with the Heisman Trophy favorite on their team. So I like their odds there. Again, I'm not upset with SMU being behind them, although I would rank them 1 spot above the Broncos. Again, I got A&M at 16. So having them at 14 is fine. They're honoring the head-to-head. Good for them. SMU or Texas A&M beat LSU, so they're ahead of them. LSU beat Ole Miss, so they were ahead of them. Credit to them for that. Same thing down below. Kansas State beat Colorado on the road, so they are ahead of the Buffaloes. Louisville beat Clemson, so they are ahead of Clemson in the rankings. So kudos to them in a way. I mean, I actually do have Clemson a little bit higher, but I also had Clemson higher than most before they lost to Louisville. So I didn't have Louisville ranked. I had Clemson in the top 10. So I wasn't going to drop Clemson that far and rise Louisville that high. So, and that's the thing, right? That's the thing that some people fail to understand here, right? Is I firmly believe in the head-to-head metric. I firmly believe that if you beat a team, you should be ranked ahead of them if those 2 teams are similar, right? But the logic is stupid. That logic is stupid, where say you take the number 1 team in the country that loses to the 25th ranked team in the country. Are you telling me the 25th ranked team in the country is then going to jump the number 1 team in the country? Let's say it's a field goal game. If Army were to beat Oregon tomorrow, are you telling me that in the next set of rankings, the Army should be above Oregon? No. Oregon would drop, say, from 1st to 9th. And Army would probably rise from 25th to 12th or something like that. But Oregon would still be ranked above Army. That happens for a lot of different teams. So I do believe in the head-to-head. I do believe that should play a role. And I do believe that it came down to 2 teams. If the last spot up for grabs was between LSU and Ole Miss, and those 2 teams had identical records, LSU should get the nod because LSU beat them. But again, just because you beat the team doesn't mean you're going to be ranked above them. There's a lot more metrics that go into that, and I think a lot of people fail to understand that. It's kind of frustrating, especially with our GE Top 25. You guys attacking there, and I'm all for it. I want the debate, and I want the controversy, and I want the conversation. But sometimes there's more that goes into it than just what you see on the field. Going through the rest of it, Iowa State a little bit low in my eyes. Only took their first loss by 1 point in the final seconds to a solid Texas Tech team. So having them at 17 is a little bit low. I have Iowa State at 14. Pittsburgh at 18. I've got Pittsburgh a little bit lower at 25. I only had Pittsburgh, I think, at 15th last week, and they got annihilated by SMU. Would have dropped them quite a bit because Pittsburgh really hasn't beaten anybody that quality on their resume. Best win is what? West Virginia, Cincinnati, North Carolina. No one that great. Don't think Missouri should be ranked at all. Would definitely have Vanderbilt ranked where Missouri is. I actually have Vanderbilt ranked at 23rd. I have Vandy ranked at 23. So I don't even know where the logic for having Missouri ranked. I'd love to know what the committee was thinking when they did that. Who has Missouri beat? Yeah, they beat Vanderbilt. I get that. They did beat Vanderbilt. But they who they lose to? They got destroyed. They got destroyed by Alabama, and they got destroyed by A&M. And that's the thing, right? It's not even that they played those two teams close. They were severely outmatched, severely destroyed. And then who has Missouri beat outside of that? Best win is Boston College, Auburn, UMass. I mean, Vanderbilt, on the other hand, had that bad loss against Georgia State, but played Alabama very close, played Texas very close. They also beat Auburn, did so by more points than Missouri did on the road. Missouri only managed to beat them by like 4 in Columbia. Auburn beat them by 10 at Auburn. Vanderbilt beat Alabama. Missouri was shut out by Alabama. And you can argue that it was because they were hurt, but even if they had been at full strength, they weren't beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Trying to think what else Vanderbilt has done that Missouri hasn't. Golly. Kentucky, I don't think Missouri and Kentucky played yet or are going to play, but bottom line is Vanderbilt to be ranked above them. You make that argument a lot about the overall record. Missouri's got a slightly better one. Strength of schedule, maybe Missouri does not own the edge there. The head-to-head, sure. The bad loss for Vanderbilt, sure. But if these two teams played again tomorrow, I'm picking Vanderbilt to win that game. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So, very interesting decision there. Army at 25, I think is a little bit low. The rest isn't that bad, believe it or not. So, the committee did make some mistakes. Couple minor disagreements. The biggest problem I have is probably the placement of Missouri. Don't think they should be ranked. And then probably Tennessee being too high. So yeah, that's probably my two biggest glaring issues. And here's the thing, guys. Once again, the playoff committee is going to be very fickle over the next month. They're going to change it seemingly, unless we've got actually a good commissioner and a good cast surrounding him. It seems that they change their criteria every single week, and these rankings are going to change every single week. These rankings are going to change drastically each and every week. They're going to fluctuate quite a bit from now to next, and obviously it's going to depend on the results. But what we're seeing now is obviously not the final product. What we see now is going to look drastically different from what the final 12-team playoff format looks like in December. So, don't overreact to the first set of rankings. But it obviously shows what teams have a lot of what teams have a lot of work to do, and what teams are sitting rather comfortably with only a few weeks left to play in the regular season. And I will say this before we transition to what the playoff picture would look like right now. What's interesting to me here is you've got teams that are pretty much locks, right? Like Oregon's going to go, Ohio State's going to go, Georgia more than likely is going to go unless they lose to Ole Miss, and things kind of get interesting there. But like, still a lot of football has to be played. But what I'm looking at here is the teams that aren't going to go to the conference championship. That's what I'm looking at closely, because in the past, with the 4-team format, we're going to pull that off. We'll keep it on. In the 4-team format, if you did not make your conference championship, you probably weren't going to the playoff. We've seen it happen. Alabama got in there before, having not played in the SEC title game. Ohio State had done it a few times. But more than likely, if you were not playing in a conference championship game, you did not have a shot at the 4-team playoff. Now you do. There are a lot of teams that are not going to play in their conference championship that are going to find their way into the college football playoff. So I'm looking at a team like Alabama or LSU. The winner of that game keeps their hopes alive. The loser of that game is probably out of the playoff race. But even the winner of that game may not make the SEC championship game. The SEC championship more than likely going to be Georgia and Texas, possibly. So let's say that's the case. Georgia plays Texas. LSU, let's say they beat Alabama, it's just sitting back in the wings at number 12 and number 11. They're not a lock to get into the playoff, but if the Tigers go 10-2 with their only losses to, what would it be, USC and on the road against A&M, both away from home, they're probably getting in. Where are they seated? Right? Are they going to be 9th? Are they going to be 11th? Could Boise State get all the way up and not be the 12th seed? There's a lot of questions that you have. So again, we're focusing so much on these first-round buys, and we should. Those are very important to go to the conference champions. But what about the teams that don't even play for their conference title? Penn State, I think Scotty just said it. That's another great one there. The Big Ten championship feels like we're on a collision course to see a rematch of Ohio State and Oregon, which means Penn State Indiana would be sitting in the wings waiting to see their name getting called. Well, if Penn State goes 11-1, but their lone loss to Ohio State, the Nittany Lions are getting in. If Indiana goes 11-1, but their lone loss to Ohio State, they should get in. So the ability to not even play for your championship and still getting in is very interesting to me. But then it becomes a matter of where are they seated? Who do they have to travel to? Do one of those teams manage to get a home game? You remember, if you finished 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, you were getting to host the first round playoff game on your campus, which is huge. So that's the storyline I'm actually watching for when I see these rankings each week going forward. I'm really, really interested in seeing that. Now, you take a look at the current playoff picture. This is what it would look like right now, thanks to Bleacher Report. I had to steal that graphic. Wow. First off, first thing I'd look at here is just how great the matchups are going to be. The people, you guys that are against the 12-team playoff, I don't know what's wrong with you, because you can't tell me you wouldn't love to see these games. Indiana at Tennessee, Boise State at Ohio State, Alabama at Texas, Notre Dame at Penn State. Those would be your opening round playoff games. I mean, how epic would those be? I would pay good money to watch Indiana and Kurt Signetti take on this Tennessee squad. I'd love to see Ashton Genty go up against this Ohio State defense. Alabama, Texas, that speaks for itself. And the Notre Dame and Penn State, two teams that have perennially been really, really good in the 14 playoff era, but have really failed to do anything with it. Notre Dame made the playoff a few times. We know that. Penn State never did. But we always knew when Notre Dame got to the playoff, they weren't going to go anywhere. They weren't going to beat Clemson. They weren't going to beat Alabama, guys like that. So he was like, great, Notre Dame's in. Let's watch them get blown out. And that's always what happened. So how great for that? Those two teams now would get to face off in this scenario here. So those would be amazing matchups. Matchups that, once again, with the exception of Texas and Alabama, because they're in the same conference, you would rarely get to see. Right? Rarely get to see, because these teams don't want to schedule each other in non-conference. They don't want to do it. And then look what the second round could be. I'll tell you right now, I'd pick, as much as I'd love to see Indiana go on a run, I would pick Tennessee to win that game, especially in Knoxville. So I'd pick Tennessee to win that. I'd pick Ohio State to beat Boise. I'd pick Texas over Bama. And I'd pick Penn State over Notre Dame. Then I would pick Georgia. I almost lean Texas at a neutral site. Give me Texas to beat Miami, who just continues to find ways to win, but hasn't looked overly impressive. And so that's another thing, right? So let's say that automatically happens. Your semifinal would be Georgia, Texas, but Texas is the 6th seed. I would take Ohio State over BYU. So then that's the 5 seed. So you could have a 1, 2, 5, 6 semifinal there. So these people that go, well, the playoff's stupid, the top 4 seeds are going to go to the semifinals anyways. That's not true. That's just not true. There's room for upsets. There's room for chaos. There's room for madness. That's what the 12-team playoff is all about. That's what we want to see. Quality football and other teams having a chance. Parity in the sport. It's a good thing. It's a crazy thing at times, but it's a good thing. And so, again, just think about how different this playoff picture is going to look next week, though, guys, because Alabama's going to play LSU. If the Crimson Tide win, they're going to have a higher seed. If they lose, LSU could very well replace them with that spot, if not be higher. Georgia's got to play Ole Miss. If Georgia loses to Ole Miss, the Bulldogs are going to lose that 2 seed for the time being. Could be replaced by Texas. Maybe Ole Miss finds themselves into this playoff picture, at least for the time being. So many changes that could come your way. Tennessee's still going to play Georgia. That could change. Indiana's still going to play Ohio State. BYU still got a handful of tough games. A lot of people picking Utah to upset the Cougars this Saturday. I disagree, but hey, the Holy War, crazy things can happen. Boise State is not a lock at the 12th seed. They could go higher. People don't seem to realize that, but Boise State could easily be higher than that 12 seed. So don't rule out a lot of stuff, guys. This is just the first set of rankings. I love what I'm seeing. Already love what I'm seeing, but these things are going to be changing every single week, just like our picture from our GE Top 25 has changed every single week. So a lot going to happen by the time even we do this show next Tuesday. When we sit down with you next Tuesday, which that time will vary because of the Champions Classic, like Kansas and Michigan State, Kentucky and Duke, something like that. Like the playoff ranking show will be between those 2 games. So you'll just have to bear with us on the time. I think we've scheduled it for 7:15, I think. I think we scheduled it for 7:15. We'll keep you updated, and you might just have to hear us ramble for a little while until we can get that first basketball game over, depending on how what happens. I remember a couple of years ago we did that. We were ready to watch the playoff show, and the game, I think it was like Kentucky and Michigan State, I think, and it went to like double overtime. So we were sitting there like ready to go, ready to break this down, and then there was a buzzer beater, overtime. Like, great, and then another overtime. So we ended up doing like an hour-long live stream before the rankings even got on. And then we spent like another hour to an hour and a half talking about the rankings. And it was a wild night, but you can't control it, man. It's great basketball. Great basketball. Very happy that's back as well. So, all right, let's do this thing. Let's talk. We'll do this. I'm gonna go to the chat for a little bit, answer some questions in the chat. We'll open up the phone lines for a little bit tonight. Not forever. We don't want to take a million calls, and we do want to get a few people in, obviously, tonight. Pull up the iPad here as well. But we do want to hear from some of you. We want to hear your thoughts on the playoff rankings, and we don't even have to stick with the playoff rankings, guys. We got so much to talk about. We can talk about Week 11. Again, those two massive matchups in the SEC, but a handful of others that we talked about earlier today or yesterday. My days are getting all screwed up. It's football, baby. It's football. All right, let's take a look here. Thanks to the chat first. J-Dog. Isn't the weather supposed to be windy and rainy for this game? That's going to be the case for a lot of games this weekend. Yes, there's at least as of right now, it's Wednesday. A lot can change by Saturday with the weather, but a lot of games on the eastern side of the country, southeastern part of the country, are expecting rain. A lot of wind, a lot of rain. How heavy, how strong, how long remains to be seen. And we had that case. We had it a lot last week, too. We had a lot of games that were very rainy. That Navy and Rice game was delayed multiple times. I think it ended up being almost like a 6-hour rain delay, which was insane. Almost was one of the longest delays in history. So, yes, for Arkansas State, Louisiana, which is being played in Lafayette, where Arkansas State has not won since 2012, it is supposed to be a windy and rainy game. And honestly, that really benefits Louisiana even more in that game because they're a very good running team. They can air the ball out very well, but they know how to run the ball. And Arkansas State has one of the worst rushing defenses in the country. So in a game where the ball is going to be slick, where it's going to be very windy, you're trying to keep that ball on the ground as much as possible. And Louisiana absolutely owns the edge there. And they own the edge in the trenches. So even with the weather, which we did take into account, it wouldn't change my pick. I would still be picking Louisiana. But it is going to impact a lot of games in the South this week. Quite a bit. So excellent point there. Let's see. What's going on, Jerry? Good to see you, Jerry. Happy to have you here, man. Hope you're doing well. Austin, yeah, we talked about that. I don't know if you were here for it. I hope you were here to hear us explain that Georgia should be ahead of Ohio State. We disagree. Again, I had Ohio State ranked second. My top 6 of the GE Top 25, which we released on Monday before the committee released their rankings, by the way, was the exact same. So all I'm saying is just go ahead and put me on the board. Put me on the committee. Been preaching that for years. My top 6 matched the committee's top 6. My top 10 was the exact same as their top 10 team-wise. Just a few switches between number 7 and number 10, but all the teams remained the same. I didn't have any team in the top 10 that they didn't, and vice versa. 11 through 13 was the exact same for me in the committee, except I only had SMU above Boise State. So really the top 13, I really couldn't be that upset about. And honestly, I call that pretty impressive. And again, I released that before the committee did. So maybe we're thinking alike, or maybe it was just a little easier to predict this year. I don't know. But bottom line is Georgia should not be ahead of Ohio State. And again, it's a stupid argument either way. All right, Georgia should be above Ohio State. It affects nothing. It affects absolutely nothing. It doesn't affect, it literally does not affect Georgia in their seed, and it doesn't affect Ohio State in their seed at all. So it just doesn't matter. So I don't think they should be, but go ahead and do it, and literally nothing changes in the playoff picture that we just showed you. So that's sometimes stupid argument. Everybody wants a higher number, but in the end, who cares if it doesn't affect where you play and who you play and things like that. Let's see here. Double O'Neill says no 3-loss team should. Okay, so here's my argument with that. All right, here's my argument with that. let's take out. So all right, double O'Neal. All right, and I like you, man. I really do. I'm glad you're here. You can't see the bottom. All right, so I'm gonna take your comment. Look at these rankings here. Look at these rankings here. And I can't remember who has 3 losses. Louisville has 3 losses. Missouri has 2, right? Missouri only has 2, I think. So Missouri's got 2. Louisville's got 3, which you don't believe Missouri should be ranked. You don't believe Vandy should be ranked with 3 losses. So who should be? All right. So let's take those teams out. Who do you put in above those teams? I agree. I don't think Missouri should be ranked. I do not think Missouri should be ranked at all. I don't. But if you want to take Louisville out, if you want to take Missouri out, if you don't want to put Vanderbilt in, who should be ranked? Who should be ranked in there? Based on resume, based on strength. You can't put South Carolina in there because South Carolina's got 3 losses. So you can't put Carolina in there. You could put Tulane in there, but is their strength of schedule really that much better than some of these? Is their quality of wins better than that of Louisville's or Missouri's or Vanderbilt's or anybody like that? They've got 2 losses to Oklahoma and Kansas State, and they're beat up on everybody else, but those aren't really good teams. You want to put Texas Tech in there? They've got 3 losses. You want to put Louisiana in there? Maybe you could get behind that, like 25. Louisiana's only got 1 loss. Haven't really beaten anybody good. Their loss is to Tulane. Best win is probably over Wake Forest, and they've beat everybody else in a relatively weak Sun Belt this year. So, again, I'll side with you. No 3-loss teams. Okay, take them out. No 3-loss teams. Who do you replace them with? What 1-loss or 2-loss team should deserve to go in? Because I could find you a lot of 1-loss, 2-loss teams in worse conferences, but their strength of schedule and the teams they beat wouldn't be worthy of a top 25 spot. It just wouldn't. And you said Tulane. J-Dog says Tulane. I mentioned Tulane. Tulane is right on the outside looking in for my top 25. I think Tulane's got 2 losses, like we mentioned. They got 2 losses to Oklahoma and to Kansas State. Okay, great. The rest of their wins are good, but they haven't beaten anybody quality. Who have they beat of quality? Their best win is against Louisiana. Louisiana is a team that's right on the outside looking in for our top 25 as well. They're a 1-loss team. Their only losses to Tulane. But again, Tulane hasn't beaten anybody. They haven't beaten anybody that great. Louisiana hasn't beaten anybody that great. So I'll side with that. I can cater to your argument, but you've got to give me someone to replace them with. That's quality enough to be in there. And that's what's been so hard about the rankings this year. The top half, top 20, even the top 22, 20, 21, 22 have been pretty easy to rank. Those are teams that for the most part deserve to be there. But those last 3, 4, sometimes 5 spots has been really, really hard to find a team that's worthy of being put in. I put Tulane in there, I think last week, and was criticized a little bit. I had Memphis in there at one point, was criticized a little bit. There's a lot of teams that you look at their record and you go, maybe they deserve a low-end top 25 spot. And then go, oh, no, their strength of schedule is terrible. They haven't beaten anybody. Their losses are bad. It's like, fine, find me somebody else. It's really, really hard this year. There are not that many teams. There are not that many fringe top 25 teams. There's just not. So that's my argument. That's my counter argument to that. You can say that, but if you do, you've got to provide a replacement, which according to the comments, I don't believe you have yet. So find me somebody and we'll talk. That's how you would handle these rankings. All right. Let's see other comments here. Take a look here. Talk about Notre Dame. Yeah. Notre Dame has a great opportunity to beat Army here in a few weeks. That would they'll crush Florida State. Their biggest tests left are Army and USC. And I say USC because it's on the road in the Coliseum. Crazy things happen in rivalry games, especially in the last week of the year. Like, I wouldn't rule anything out. But more than likely, Notre Dame will finish 11-1, and that would be good enough for a playoff spot. If Notre Dame loses one more game, regardless of who it's to, they're out. A 2-loss Notre Dame team that does not play in a conference, that does not have a conference championship, whose losses would be in Northern Illinois, and even if it's Army, and Army's a good team this year, but even if they lose to Army, does not stand a chance of getting in. The other teams they have are Florida State, who's god-awful, and USC, who I believe has a losing record right now. They're either 500 or do have a losing record. I think they're 3-4-5. Are they 4-5? regardless, would not be good enough, right? So Notre Dame has to win out. One more loss, and the Fighting Irish are done. They're not getting in. Yeah, there's no argument there. Let's see. That's an interesting comment here. If Boise wins out, they will be no less than the 5th seed as a conference champion. No less than the 5th seed as a conference champion. And that's where it gets interesting, right? Double O'Neill, it all comes down to what happens ahead of them. It all comes down to that. That and how does Boise look in those games? If they win out, great. Are they dominating like they have been? Do they struggle a little bit? Who do they play in the Mountain West Championship? And again, I'll pull this back up again. What happened ahead of them? They're 12th right now. Well, we know Alabama has some tough tests left on their schedule. Alabama could lose, but here's the thing. If Alabama loses, does LSU jump Boise State? I would say so. I'd say they deserve to, right? Even though LSU would have 2 losses and Boise only has 1, LSU beating the number 11 team in the country, I think would be worthy of jumping more than, or at least 4 spots over Boise State, who would beat Nevada, right? I would put them there. Because once again, LSU's strength of schedule and that quality of a win. Boise's best win is what? Washington State, which is great. They're a top 25 team, but it's really not all that great. Not saying Boise's a bad team at all. They're doing what they should. But so it's what happens ahead of them and then the teams behind them. Do they jump? Does the committee propel them over Boise State because they're beating higher quality teams? You look at the rest of the way. Indiana's still going to play Ohio State. One of those teams is going to lose. Georgia could lose to Ole Miss. Tennessee still has to play Georgia. They could lose. BYU, who knows who could slip up. We talked about Notre Dame. So many things can happen ahead of Boise State. But if those teams are losing to teams that are like slightly behind Boise, like LSU and like an SMU, A&M, teams like that, I would expect the committee to propel those teams ahead of the Broncos solely due to strength of schedule and quality of win. Because a win against Alabama, a win against Tennessee, a win against BYU, whatever it is way better than a win against Wyoming or Nevada or Air Force or anything like that. Not to take away from Boise State, not to say they're a bad team, not to say they're not worthy, because they absolutely are. And they can't help the conference that they play in and how bad it is. But they're doing what they should do. Winning out is doing what they should do. But to say they would be no less than the 5th seed is bold, because that would require them to be ranked pretty dang high. They would have to be ranked within the top 5 of these rankings. They really would. And keep in mind, conference championship weekend would play a very, very big role too. If you've got number 1 Oregon, if Boise's sitting there at number 6, and number 1 Oregon plays I'm just being hypothetical here, number 7 Indiana, and Indiana beats Oregon to win the Big Ten, Indiana's going to shoot up in those rankings. They're going to jump Boise State, no doubt about it. Oregon, if that's their only loss, most likely wouldn't drop below 6. And you can't move Boise ahead of Oregon because Oregon owns the head-to-head. It obviously has played tougher teams, has more quality wins like Ohio State. Boise probably wouldn't get that 5th seed. So no less than 5th, I don't think so. The path is there. There is a path to the 5th seed. There's a path to a first-round bye for Boise. There really is if chaos ensues. And I wouldn't put it past that with the season that we've been having. But wouldn't go that far yet. I will say this. They're not a lock for the 12 seed. They can absolutely get themselves out of the 12 seed spot. But to get up as high as number 5 or even a first-round bye is going to take a lot of work. And not so much work on Boise's part, but more so help from other people. Good talking. Colorado still is in the mix. Absolutely. Does Washington State, hey, Doggy, how's it going? Does Washington State get in the playoff if they win out? No. Well, no, unless just absolute chaos ensues. If just team after team after team after team continues to lose and Washington State continues to win in dominating fashion, and we're talking dominating, they can't afford another near hiccup against San Jose State or San Diego State. They've got to win big, win in impressive margins, finish 11-1 with the only loss to Boise State. You could maybe argue they have a case, but honestly, there's a bit stronger case for a 2-loss power team getting in over a 1-loss Washington State team because just of how weak their schedule is. Now, look, I will say this: their strength of their resume can get better and can improve if their opponent they've already beaten start winning more. For example, Texas Tech. They beat Texas Tech in dominating fashion earlier in the year. Texas Tech beats Colorado on Saturday, then the Red Raiders will be in the top 25, and that makes Washington State look a lot better. If somehow Washington, who the Cougars beat earlier in the year, beats Penn State somehow, the Huskies might not be ranked, but that would be a heck of a win and use that transitive property. Well, Washington State beat Washington, who beat Penn State. So that's pretty dang impressive. It makes Washington State look a lot better. So honestly, it's not so much for me, Washington State, what they're doing. They got to win. They got to win convincingly. But honestly, their strength of schedule and their resume gets better, not from the games that they win, but from what their opponents who they've already beaten, what they do. That's what could help them. They need madness, and they need their opponents to play very well. And that's just a little too much to ask, I think. That's just my take there, though. Let's see. Let's see here. Robert says he thinks Georgia's going to beat Ole Miss. Robert, we'll have our prediction for that game tomorrow. Tomorrow, right here on the channel, we will predict Georgia and Ole Miss. So we'll be looking forward to getting your thoughts. Make sure to watch the video and leave your comment there. J-Dog says Carson Beck can't be trusted. I'm concerned for Carson Beck. I think anybody who's a Georgia fan should be. Dude has eight interceptions in his last 3 games. I think he has three interception games, including each of his last 2. Had 3 against Texas, had 3 against Florida. He's a good quarterback. They're averaging nearly 300 passing yards per game. He's got a great arm. But his decision-making has been really, really bad this year. Surprisingly bad this year as compared to last year. So I don't know what's going on there. But he's now going up against a ferocious Ole Miss pass rush that's one of the best in the entire country in Oxford. Here's the one thing I will tell you here, though, for everybody listening. Interesting little tidbit for you. I'll give you 2 little betting nuggets, which is a great opportunity to bring up our expert picks. We're on a pretty good run, 12-6-1 run in our best bet section just for college football. We're hitting over 67% of our best bets in the NFL. 2 fun little betting nuggets for you. Number 1, Lane Kiffin has hosted 4 top 10 teams in Oxford, right? 4 top 10 teams have come to town in Oxford since Lane Kiffin took over. He's only won 1 of those, and that was against Kentucky, who was number 7 at the time back in 2022, right? And that, not that you can take it away. Kentucky might have been a little overranked at the time. But 4 top 10 teams have come to Oxford under Lane Kiffin. He's only won 1 of those. That's it. He has struggled to beat the big dogs. He struggled against Alabama under Nick Saban. He got his butt whooped last year against Georgia. Granted, that game was in Athens, but they lost 52-17. He has not fared well against the best teams in the conference. It's one thing to beat up on Arkansas or Vanderbilt or, Wake Forest or Middle Tennessee or whatever. Those are great stat padding games. But how do you fare against Alabama? They already lost to LSU in Death Valley. How do you fare against Georgia this Saturday? So Lane Kiffin does really, really good at winning the games he should. Except for like Kentucky this year, but not so good in the games that are kind of toss-ups. Games that are maybe the most important when it comes to SEC standings and playoff races. And again, if Ole Miss loses this game, that's their 3rd loss of the year. They're out of the playoff race, and it would be a major, major disappointment considering how much money they spent on this team. Very similar to Ohio State. Ole Miss dumped a lot of money getting talent to stay in Oxford, to bring in talent to Oxford, and if they take their 3rd loss of the year before it's even over, that would be a really, really disappointing season, especially with the playoff expanded to what it is. So that's betting nugget number 1. Betting nugget number 2, LSU and Alabama play this Saturday. Did you know that since Brian Kelly took over in Baton Rouge, he is 13-0 at home at night in Death Valley? So we always hear about how hard it is to play in Death Valley at night. One of the most difficult places to play in the country. Great atmosphere, one of the best atmospheres in college football, Death Valley at night, and he hasn't lost. Some of those games, sure, are against cupcake opponents. I get it. but a lot of them aren't. Alabama 2 years ago wasn't, when they won 32-31 in overtime. Undefeated at home at night at Tiger Stadium. Watch out on Saturday for LSU and Alabama. We already predicted LSU to win. We took LSU today to beat Alabama in our Alabama LSU prediction video. We actually dropped that nugget in that video. So keep that in mind as you're watching these games, maybe as you're betting these games on Saturday. And we highly recommend, if you're going to bet them, you go through us. Highly recommend you use us, our expert picks. We're on a great run to our best bets, and we are 23 subscribers away from that 24-hour live stream. 77 out of 100, slowly but surely getting there. And we hope to get there maybe by the end of this month. I don't know. That might be too much to ask. I don't know. But sign up today, guys. Sign up today. Be the guy. Join the team. Come win big with us. And use those betting nuggets to your advantage. Highly recommend it. All right, going through a few more comments here, and then we might, I don't know, man. The comments are great. Y'all are keeping me busy. I feel bad not getting to them. Taking a while to get to them, I guess. Let me see here. Carson Beck can't be trusted. Ryan, what's going on, Ryan? Good to see you, man. We have a couple of, I think I saw your name earlier, so we'll get to your comments later on at the bottom. But this one, you worry for Notre Dame. Even if they win out, the SEC could steal 4 bids. I just would be shocked to see the committee leave out an 11-1 Notre Dame. Yes, the loss in Northern Illinois would linger. It sticks out like a sore thumb. I just don't know how you do it. In a normal year, in the 4-team format, they'd have a really good chance of getting in with that. And now with the 12-team format, you're telling me they can't. And I know strength of schedule and quality of wins and things like that, but they'd still have that win against A&M. And if A&M finishes 9-3, which is very possible, that's still a pretty dang good win. They finished 10-2 with a win over Texas. That makes Notre Dame look even better, because that would show that Texas couldn't win in College Station, Missouri couldn't win in College Station, LSU couldn't win in College Station, but Notre Dame could, and did so by double digits. So that's holding a lot of weight right now. And that's kind of similar to what we were talking about with Washington State. You want your opponents to do well. Notre Dame, they continue to root for A&M, because everything that A&M does that looks good helps Notre Dame look good. So they'd have a win over the Aggies. They'd have a win over Louisville, who destroyed Clemson, who's ranked right now. They'd have a win over Navy, who isn't ranked anymore, but was at the time. They would maybe have a win over Army if they went out, like you said, who's ranked at the time. Maybe will be ranked when they play each other in a few weeks. They'd have a road win at USC, which maybe isn't saying much. Sorry, Ryan, I know you're a fan, but still not an easy place to play. Still not an easy team to play. God, there's someone else they beat too that I'm blanking on. That's like a semi-decent victory. They beat Louisville, beat Notre Dame, Navy. I know they beat Georgia Tech. That's not what I'm thinking of. Maybe I'm blanking. Georgia Tech, Purdue. But they'd have a lot of power conference victories. One really bad loss that happened in the second week of the year, and they didn't lose since then. They won. They would have won 10 straight games. I just don't see them getting left out. I think it'd be really, really hard to leave them out. Again, one more loss, though, and they're definitely done. One more loss, and they're done. Christian, thoughts on Louisville? Do I think you'll win your last 3 games? I mean, first off, Christian, congrats on the win, man. That win over Clemson was – no one saw that coming. Maybe you did. I know you're a big Louisville fan. Maybe you had faith. I didn't. Clemson was playing really, really good football. We know how tough it is to play at Clemson, especially at night. I just didn't see Louisville winning that game. Not only did they win it, they did it in dominating fashion. So kudos to them. Finally seeming to hit their stride and seeming to look like the team we thought they'd be back in the preseason. Not a 3-loss team as of right now. But hey, you know what? You win your last 3, like you mentioned, and you finish 9-3. Maybe in the hunt still for the ACC title. Who knows what's going to happen for that second place? SMU seems to be the favorite right now, but Clemson's still in the mix. Louisville could still be in the mix. Miami seems like a lock at this point, but the question is who they're going to play. Christian, I would say at least 2. The only one that's tripped me up is Pittsburgh. I mean, and Pittsburgh looked horrible against SMU in that offense, and Louisville, as we know, is going to pretty dang good offense. So I would probably lean Louisville in that game. So yeah, I think you can win those last 3 and finish 9-3. If you don't, I think you would slip up to Pitt or Kentucky just because of the rivalry factor and how well Kentucky's played in this series as of late. But still, Kentucky's really, really bad this year. They're just not a good team. Have not been the team we thought they'd be back in the preseason. Look, I drove all the way to Lexington, man. We went all the way around the world this summer, filming predictions. When I was in Lexington, I was talking to people. They were hyped. They were pumped, ready to go. Thought Vandegrift and the offense were going to be great, and like 10 starters back on defense, and they have just laid a massive egg. Something that we didn't see. And even when they beat Ole Miss, it's like, that's it. Mark Stoops, he's turning it around. Slow start, but they're going to peak now, and they haven't. They've just continued to tank. Maybe could flirt with a bowl game still, maybe, but probably not. So, yes, I think you'll be favored in all three of those games. And as of right now, barring any change, I'd probably pick them to win all three. Probably so. And like you said, the Pittsburgh game's at home and on senior night, which is a huge, huge plus as well. Those games matter. Those extra little tidbits play a big role in how I pick teams. Is it senior night? Is it during the day? Is it at night? Is it at home? Is it not at home? A lot of factors go into play there. Let's see here. Ryan, we are very glad you got to join the live stream tonight, man. We're very pumped for you. Glad you were able to be here. Jerry, who do I think is the Heisman frontrunner now? It's still got to be Genty, man. I mean, it's still got to be Ashton Genty. How many yards does he have now? I'm gonna look it up. Like how many yards? It's still a ridiculous number. He is the best player. He's the best player in the country. I'll go out. I'll just go out and say it. He's the best player in the country. He is putting up ridiculous numbers. I don't care necessarily who they're against. To have 190 carries for 1,525 yards and 20 touchdowns, averaging 8 yards a carry, and also has 81 reception yards. So he has over 1,600 all-purpose yards and 21 total touchdowns. And he's still got, 3 games left to play? Right? No. 4. Yes, he's going to rush for 2,000 yards. His last 4 games were against Nevada, San Jose State, Wyoming, and Oregon State. If you're just counting the regular season, because we typically don't count postseason stats towards these things, he's going to rush for 2,000 yards. We're going to have a 2,000-yard rusher. He probably can flirt with 30 rushing touchdowns. Is he going to break the all-time record? Probably not. He could flirt. He's going to need some massive games down the stretch. Boise State wants him to get it. The coaching staff wants him to get it. He himself wants to get it. Yeah, I mean, he is unbelievable, and he's so much fun to watch. So I would have Genty as my number 1 Heisman front runner. I don't think there's any debate about that. There shouldn't be any debate about that. If, heaven forbid, he starts to tank for some reason, starts to struggle or gets hurt or something like that happens, I would probably move in Cam Ward as my number 1 after that. I would put Cam Ward in there. I think the Travis Hunter hype is a little overblown. I don't think he's – if you want to invite him to New York, cool. Do I think he should win it? No, absolutely not. Right now, in my eyes, it's a two-man race between Ashton Genty and Cam Ward. That's my take. But great question. Give me talking on the Heisman. I love the Heisman. Does anybody remember? Truly, does anybody remember when we used to do that? Like we've changed our format for these videos so many times. Does anybody remember when we used to do the weekly recap videos or the prediction videos? I can't remember what it was. When we would have the Heisman watch on our whiteboard. Like we would have like the 3 or 4 players that I had in the Heisman. In some years, that number 1 stayed the same every single week. And then in some other years, it was fluctuating every single week. Like, does anybody, maybe y'all were here for that, maybe you weren't. I think we did that for like the first 2 years of the channel. So it would have been 2017 and 18, I think, was when we did that. And then we stopped doing that for some reason. I don't know, just extra content and longer videos. But good times. I always like the Heisman race, man. It's always intriguing to me. But Jerry, good to see you, man. And great question. Let's see here. Look at the rest of the comments. Ryan, sorry. Carson Beck is the most overrated quarterback in the country. It's only because of his weapons on the outside and their defense. Hasn't gotten any press. He's Mac Jones reincarnated. Wow. Bold, my man. Bold. But you know what? I like it. Mac Jones reincarnated. I'm pulling that up on my iPad too. The only difference I have with that, Mac Jones was terrible in the NFL. Although I will say that I think the Patriots handled his time in the league very, very poorly. Multiple different coordinators put freaking Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator one year. I mean, you were just asking him to fail at that point. Never helped out with any weapons. That was the Patriots' fault. At Alabama, though, he was a dang good quarterback, right? Like I think had Mac Jones been properly developed and had better coaching, he would have been okay. Not great, but okay. But he kind of got thrust in the fire. Was starting week 1 as a rookie. I mean, if you remember, Ryan, he had a pretty good rookie season. Led the Patriots to the playoffs. I got all the way. They got destroyed by the Bills, but he got them there and didn't look bad. And then everything fell apart as the weapons went away and the coaching got worse, and it was just a downhill spiral from there. But at Alabama, I mean, he was accurate. He was completing like over 70% of his passes. He was really, really good. Had some great throws in there. Granted, he has a Heisman Trophy winner at his disposal and Devontae Smith that year. But still, regardless, was a pretty good quarterback. Carson Beck, a little bit different build, a little bit different style. Definitely more turnover prone than Mac Jones. At least he was in college. But I agree. I think it's easier to downplay. It's easier to downplay the struggles for Carson Beck right now because of how good Georgia is everywhere else, right? The defense is phenomenal. You've got receivers that can make you look good. You're still finding a way to win games. So what's it matter? What's it matter? It matters because when Georgia, pull this up for you, and I'm not arguing against you, when Georgia has to play Penn State or Notre Dame, and then Miami, Texas, or Alabama, and then anyone on that left side of the bracket, if they were able to get that far, has to play Oregon, has to play Ohio State, has to play, honestly, I don't think Indiana or Tennessee would make it to the national championship, but you never know. So probably most likely Oregon or Ohio State. That's where it matters because that's where you get in trouble. And it's going to matter this weekend, man. I'm telling you, if Carson Beck doesn't know how to take care of the football and he turns it over multiple times like he's done each of the last 2 games against Ole Miss, the Rebels are going to make him pay for it. And I don't care how good your defense is if you're Georgia. You're not coming back from a 17, 20-point deficit if Carson Beck turns the ball over again and again and again, right? That's the problem. Ole Miss's offense is so dang good, and they're not going to light Georgia up like they did Arkansas or any of those other weaker opponents. But if you give them extra possessions, especially with favorable field position, Lane Kiffin is going to take advantage of it. So he's got to be very, very careful. Otherwise, the Bulldogs could take their second loss of the year. Second loss of the year, guys. And the SEC race gets insane after that. Because keep in mind, they would be second loss of the year with a game remaining against Tennessee. Both those losses in conference play. They don't have the tiebreaker over Alabama if it came to that. They would have the tiebreaker over Texas. They wouldn't have the tiebreaker over Ole Miss if it came to that, if they lose to Ole Miss. So the SEC race would get insane if, in fact, they do lose to Ole Miss this Saturday. And again, we will share our prediction on if they win or lose tomorrow. Tomorrow, right here on the channel. We're going to be breaking that down for you. So don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Let's see here. Yes, Texas Tech and Colorado. We are predicting that on Friday. Friday will come your way right here on the channel. Extra video. Not a top 25 matchup, not a ranked versus ranked matchup, but a very good matchup, an intriguing matchup that I thought was worth doing an entire video on. So for you Buffalo and Red Raider fans, you're welcome. You're welcome. Brady, good to see you, Brady. Thoughts on Arizona? McMillan's a beast, but the rest of the team seems to be huge. Look, I'm going to tell you this. I had blind faith in Arizona because of the talent they had. Like Noah Fafita was really good, and I expected more. Obviously, McMillan has been phenomenal. It's going to be a first-round draft pick, no doubt about that. But I could have told you Arizona was in a world, and I did. I will say I can't remember what video it was in back in the preseason, but The Brent Brennan hire was a terrible, terrible hire. It was terrible. And I think anybody with half a brain could have told you it was that bad. But granted, in Arizona's defense, who were they supposed to get? Jedd Fisch jumped ship pretty late, right? We didn't know DeBoer was going to leave Washington to go replace Saban in Alabama. We didn't know that. Like, he coached in the national championship, which is in late January. And then like a week and a half after that, he leaves for Alabama to go to Washington. That job opened up, and then Jedd Fisch wanted it. So Jedd Fisch was totally going to stay at Arizona until that job opened up, and they came calling. He was like, heck yeah, I want to go. So they were like, they're scrambling, and their only other option was to either pretty much promote from within, poach some other coordinator from another school, or go get some low-level group of 5 coach that wasn't terrible, not great, not terrible, that clearly was going to want out. And obviously going to Arizona from San Jose State's a major upgrade. But Brennan was terrible at San Jose State. He had them more competitive than probably they'd ever been. I mean, multiple different bowl games, a couple big-time wins in there, was in the Mountain West Championship not too long ago. I think it was the COVID year. But bottom line is he was not that great of a coach. He had a terrible record with the Spartans. Again, it's a difficult place to win, difficult place to recruit. But regardless, they just weren't good. They weren't good. He wasn't good. And I think they thought, oh, he's an offensive mind. He's kind of familiar with the program. Let's bring him in there. He can do well with the talent that we've got, because he was able to keep all that talent, and it just all fell apart. And I'm going to preach it time and time again. 5-star talent versus 5-star coaching and culture, right? The culture and the coaching matters. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have a good enough leader leading your program and a good enough coach instilling the culture, and I'm not saying Brennan's a bad guy or a bad coach or that he doesn't have a good culture in Tucson. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they have the talent and it's not panning out. Why isn't it panning out? It starts with the head coach. If you've got all that talent on the roster and they're not winning, it's because something's not clicking. And you immediately look to the head coach. That's the bottom line. So very surprising on how bad they've been. I didn't expect them to be as good as they were last year. Knew they were going to take a little bit of a step back. This bad, definitely not. So yeah, but definitely McMillan, man, he is going to be a first round draft pick. Very well could be a top 10 pick. And I see you guys talking about the Cowboys need a receiver. The Patriots need a receiver. Patriots need an offensive line is what they need. But a receiver would be good too. It's going to be very, very interesting over the next little bit. Tell you what, we will take a couple of calls. I delayed it long enough, and if we don't get any calls, that's fine. That's okay. But we won't take many, because we'll probably go for another just few minutes or so, 20, 30 minutes. I do have to wrap things up a little early tonight, unfortunately, but I do want to get a couple guys on the line. If anybody wants to call, if they don't, we'll keep doing the chat, because you guys have done a phenomenal job strictly carrying this live stream tonight with some great questions, some great discussion points. And I know I rambled quite a bit with the playoff discussion, which is why we're here. Which is why we're here, to talk about the playoff and talk about the rankings. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing on Tuesday. So you won't even have to wait a whole week. You won't even have to wait a whole week to come back for another live stream. We'll be here on Tuesday night. We'll keep you updated on that time so we can talk about the rankings live with you as they're released in the middle of those 2 massive college basketball games, and see if we agree or disagree. Ironically, surprisingly, the playoff committee did a decent job for once. Typically, their first set of rankings are really, really bad. And this year, I felt that they actually did pretty decent. I'll give them credit. I really will. All right, let's go. We got a call. Let's see who we got. All right, let's see here. Brady, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Hey, what's going on, Brady? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Nothing too much going on right now. Just this Saturday, I will be heading down to South Bend to go see Notre Dame take on Florida State, and just kind of get an idea. I obviously know that Florida State's having a horrible season. I know that they are probably the most disappointing team we've seen yet. But I just don't really know what it is. I haven't really been paying attention to them too much. And I know they've got talent. Maybe it's just a culture thing or a coaching thing, or I maybe mix of both. So do you have any idea, like, as to how this team has just completely fell off the face of the earth just in the span of 1 year from going 13-1, ACC champions, only loss coming from a completely depleted team in the bowl game to just now just being as just terrible as they are?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, it kind of started. There's two things that go with this. Number one is Mike Norvell is a decent coach. He's not a great coach. And if you actually go back and look at his year-by-year records from the time that he started at Florida State to now, everybody goes, oh, he's so great because he had a 10-win season, and he followed that up with that 13-win season. Well, here's the thing. If you go back and look, he had 2 losing seasons prior to that, got the 10-win season only because they had a ridiculously easy schedule, and they lost every game against every quality opponent they had. So every decent opponent they had, they lost in 2022, and then won 10 games. So a little bit overhyped. They come into 2023 with all those players back. They returned practically every starter. So naturally, they played very well. Maybe you contribute part of that to coaching. Maybe you attribute that partially just to the talent that they had. You clearly saw how bad they were without Jordan Travis, though. When he went down, granted, he's such a great quarterback, was such a great quarterback. They struggled mightily against Florida and Louisville, won both, but still didn't make the playoffs. So Norvell really didn't have that great of a track record in Tallahassee prior to those 2, and I will say, kind of fluke years. Granted, what we're seeing now is a 1-win team. No one saw this coming, but the negative momentum, which does begin with coaching, Brady, happened with the bowl game. Florida State spent so much time, even Norvell himself spent so much time complaining about getting left out of the playoff. All the players, elite players that they had on that team, didn't want to play in the bowl game, either opted out, transferred, got ready for the draft, whatever it was, and they proceeded to get beat by 60. And everybody was like, well, we only got beat by 60 because we got robbed from our playoff berth, and our guys didn't want to be there, and we were playing with our third string, so it doesn't matter. Well, then you all off season, you don't focus on getting better and replacing those guys. Instead, you sit there and are dwelling on a 60-point loss to end the year, continuously complaining about being left out of the 14 playoff, and not really replacing the talent that they lost. DJ Uiagalelei has not been good over the course of his collegiate career. The defense lost way more starters and talent than people realized, and it all got exposed in week 1 against Georgia Tech. And I think a lot of that comes down to the coaching staff not having this team ready. And as soon as they lost to Georgia Tech, they realized their hopes were done because the schedule was tough after that. They still had, still got the Notre Dame game. They still had Miami. They still had so many other games on the schedule that were going to be tough. And even with the 12-team format, you couldn't afford much room for error. When you lose your first game of the year, you're pretty much done for. And so I think the culture completely was diminished after the Georgia Tech loss. I think the culture was pretty much diminished. Really, honestly, I'm rambling. I'll stop here. But it all ended when Jordan Travis got hurt. This problem began as soon as he got hurt against North Alabama late November last year. When he went down, Florida State immediately went down with him, despite the fact they still won the ACC.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of that. Just from, like, I really am kind of also struggling to see, like, why exactly Florida State was so, kind of expected to be as good as they were. And outside of the DJ Uiagalelei transfer, and probably looking back, I think we really honestly should have been a lot more skeptical, just knowing that he only really had one okay year at Oregon State. His freshman year at Clemson in the COVID season showed a lot of promise, but that is just a completely irrelevant season. I think, honestly, yeah, it just seems like a culture thing. Like, they spent too much of the offseason complaining and whining, and they just, that's really what's caused this. There's no, from what I've picked up, there's no sense of pride in their tradition or their culture. And the guys that they have accumulated through the portal either really weren't all that good, or they probably didn't spend too much time putting this team together. It's just been a mess. And I really haven't paid too much attention to FSU since their horrible start, losing bad to Georgia Tech, of course, Boston College at home. Only win come against a very, very mediocre Cal team. I think just the culture is atrocious there. I think based on just what we're seeing, I think it's probably going to take a pretty considerable time before Florida State really starts getting to where their fan base probably wants them to be. And then maybe the reason I'm calling in, I think they're just maybe in my heart as a Notre Dame fan getting used to kind of embarrassing losses. But I just don't see how Florida State wins this game. I think Notre Dame, maybe I'm kind of obvious here, but Notre Dame just much more talented, much more to play for. I think that it would be a pretty and of course Florida State now on the surface, based on how they are right now, obviously it's not a huge win, but it's still a marquee team to beat and a team that I don't really think Notre Dame has that much respect for. So hopefully I can watch a pretty big beatdown in South Bend. This is a team whose fan base I really don't have much respect for. Just their culture has been atrocious. I kind of agree with you. It just seems like everything that's gone wrong for them really isn't because of everyone else, but it really kind of seems to be all the blame is on them.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree. It is pretty much exactly that. And, I think you have nothing to worry about. You guys are almost 4 touchdown favorites. I really think you could stick a high school team out there offensively for Notre Dame, and the defense would do their job. That's what's going to come down. Florida State's offense is so bad. Their offensive line is so bad. Notre Dame's defense is so good that I think the defense could probably single-handedly win this game for you. And I'm not saying they're going to score a lot of defensive touchdowns, but they're going to put the offense in such good of a position that I think you could stick a high school team out there and they would be able to score enough points to beat Florida State. I just don't think it's going to be close. Still, like I said, it's a marquee team. It's a name brand team. So anytime you beat Florida State, regardless of the record is, it's a big win. And obviously Notre Dame needs to do everything in their power to win this game by as much as they can because the committee is going to be looking at that. Notre Dame has no room for error. So every win they get helps them out. And every win they get by a large margin helps them out. And I fully expect them to win this game by 20 plus on Saturday.
Yeah, just probably for Florida State, probably just gonna win as many games as they are lawsuits.
I think you nailed that.
Yeah, just that probably is gonna be about it. Take care. Just hope the rest of the spring goes well. Go Irish.
Hey, appreciate you, Brady. Thanks for the call, man.
Oh, no problem.
All right, that was Brady Glassman. All right, let's get him. I think he's in the car here. I think this was our resident Rutgers fan, Brandon. What's going on, man?
Hey, it's good. How are you doing? It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. It's good to hear from you.
Yeah, just thought I'd pop in, talk about some football,
Absolutely. Let's bring it on, man.
Yeah, there was one topic I wanted to think about calling in a while ago, lines of scrimmage. How important are they compared to the quarterback? Because I believe they're very important and possibly more important than the QB. Because what good is the QB going to do behind a bad offensive line,
Yeah, I think that line right there is exactly what I would have said. Look, you need a good quarterback. If you have a good quarterback, especially one that maybe is a little bit mobile or has a very good IQ, that can sometimes make up for poor offensive line play. But even then, not all the time. If your quarterback is constantly under duress, constantly fighting for his life, running for his life, I don't care if you've got Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes back there. It's not going to do him any good. And then on top of that, you've got to have an offensive line that's able to create, not only protect your quarterback, but open up some running lanes. Even if you're running an air raid type of offense, you're going to run the ball every now and then, and you wouldn't like to get stuffed every time. Goal line situations, you need an offensive line that can get a big enough push to get you over the goal line. We see a lot of teams that are unable to do that on a regular basis. Brady just talked about Florida State. One of their biggest issues this year is their offensive line. They can't protect their quarterback. They cannot run the ball to save their life. And that's because of their inability to win the trenches. So we talk about that a lot, that games are won at the line of scrimmage. And that sounds very cliche, but it's 100% true.
Yeah, exactly. And even though we know DJ Leon Delay, I think I might just butcher his last name, but anyway, like even though he's not good, he's going to be even worse behind a porous O line.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the thing. DJ. It's interesting. I think his fall off should be studied because he had a mediocre time at Clemson. Was really good when he got thrust in there, like as a freshman. Played those 2 games during COVID. After that, which is kind of mediocre. Clemson's offensive line wasn't all that bad. So obviously he has a lot of mechanics he's got to work on. But again, if your quarterback doesn't have time to, if he's immediately getting pressured as soon as the ball hits his hands out of shotgun, they're not going to be able to do anything. And you can design a lot of plays that allow him to get the ball out quick, but those typically aren't going to go anywhere. And that also allows for a lot of room for mistakes. So you've got to allow your quarterback time. And nowadays, if you watch like Sunday Night Football, for example, they kind of have the throw meter. You've got the how quick are these quarterbacks releasing the ball, and I think the general rule of thumb is like 3 seconds. If your quarterback can hold on to the ball for 3 seconds, you're doing a pretty good job. And to us, that doesn't sound like a lot, but for a quarterback, that's a lifetime. DJ doesn't even have that this year.
No, not at all. And then you look at the other end, like Georgia has a really good offensive line. Yeah, Carson Beck has been mediocre, but he can spend all day in the pocket. Like he just take a nap, wake up, text his girlfriend, get some Dunkin' Donuts, and then throw the football.
Yeah. You know what? That honestly comes down. Very true. He's got all the time in the world, and that comes down to IQ. That IQ and receivers. Because bottom line is the receivers also have to create separation. You can have a great quarterback with a great arm, but if the receivers aren't doing their job, he has no one to throw to. But also, you've got to be smart. I think a lot of times quarterbacks, especially if they have that much time, they feel the need to force a pass. Like I've been sitting in the pocket for 5 seconds. I can't just throw this ball away. Well, yeah, you can. If there's nobody there, throw it away. Eventually, someone's going to get open. But I think the pressure gets into these quarterbacks' heads. They've got to force a throw that's not there. They've got to find a way to be Superman because their offensive line is doing such a good job. But that's not the case, and it drives me insane when quarterbacks refuse to just throw the ball away. Like if I'm a coach, I would much rather have 3rd and 10 because you threw the ball away than you giving the ball to the other team.
Yeah, but there's obviously a different psychology if it is 3rd and 10 or even 4th and 10, or you have to go for it. Like there's different psychology,
Yeah. I mean, every situation is different, no doubt about that. But I mean, on your average down, average play, I think that's kind of the mindset.
Yeah. And on the other side of things, you also got the D line has to create pressure, decrease the amount of time. It's like a long battle. And going back to Florida State, that defensive line was the only reason they even have a win in the first place.
Right.
If it weren't for Florida's offensive line, Florida State doesn't have anything.
Yeah. Well, and that's the D line, I think doesn't get as much attention as the offensive line. You focus on sacks, you focus on tackles for a loss. Here's the thing: those are hard to come by, right? I mean, generating pressure is huge. If you can create pressure on an opposing quarterback, it's huge. The biggest thing that I say the defensive line has to do is disrupt. You have to disrupt the play. You don't have to sack the quarterback. You don't have to get multiple tackles for a loss. But flushing the quarterback out of the pocket, especially if he's not a runner, batting the ball down at the line of scrimmage. Still, nothing happens there, just a loss of down at that point. But creating habit, creating disruption is the job of the defensive line. If you get a sack, if you force a fumble, if you get tackled for a loss, that's a bonus. That's huge. It's great. But just disrupting a play is what the defensive line can do. You've got to get enough push at the line of scrimmage to cause that disruption. And Florida State doesn't have that either. That's really one of the biggest reasons Florida State has struggled this year. You can blame it on DJ Uyunglele. You can blame it on coaching, which a lot of it is on coaching. But bottom line is they have been horrendous on the offensive line. They've been horrendous on the defensive line because the offensive line is so bad, they can't get anything going offensively. Because the defensive line is so bad, the opposing offenses have all the time in the world to do whatever they want to them. And that's what's led to their 1-7 start.
Yep. That's why the trenches are so important. But the question is, why do so few teams have good offensive line and some defensive line? That's what it feels like.
What was the comment?
Huh?
What did you say? What was that? What was that last comment?
No, it feels like there's so few teams that have good offensive and defensive line.
Right. Yes.
It feels like
Yeah. No, you're I think for some teams it's kind of a lost art. We focus so much now on skill positions, we focus on quarterbacks, we focus on wide receivers, we focus on speed and big plays and electricity, and we kind of forget about the fundamentals and we forget about the basics. We forget about the cornerstone of every team. It's not your quarterback all the time, and that's a huge role. It's not your star safety or your star receiver or your star running back like Ashton Genty. It is your line of scrimmage, because without the line of scrimmage, you don't have a team.
Exactly. Yep.
Man. Well, Comic Dude, my man, it was great hearing from you. It was fantastic to get a call from you. I still root for your Scarlet Knights every weekend, man. I always hope they do well. Another kind of struggling at the moment, but I'm hoping they can at least get to a bowl game. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, let's see what we do against Minnesota.
We can only hope, man. We can only hope.
Yep. Take care, buddy.
Hey, you too, man. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
All right, Brandon, our resident Rutgers fan. Appreciate you and your call. So good to hear from you again as well, man. It was been too long. It's been too long since I've seen you in the comment section too. So I was really surprised to get the phone call from you. Great to hear from you. Man, he's got an excellent point. He's got an excellent point. Ryan, hey Ryan, give us a call, man. We'll make you the last caller. We'll make you the last caller, Ryan. Give us a call. I'm sorry, I don't have a screener. I can't do 2 calls at once. Putting the guy on hold, sometimes I lose the connection. It's a whole thing. So no, let's get you on. Let's close it out with a big one tonight, my friend. And Stedman Riley, good to see you, my man. Stedman, I will answer that question in deep detail later on, but I can tell you my quick answer. My quick answer is more of a negative way than positive in my eyes. And I could go off on a 2-hour tangent on NIL. I'm not gonna. Maybe you and me one-on-one, we can talk about that. But I would say NIL has negatively affected the sport more so than it has positive. Nothing we can do about it. It's unfortunate there's nothing we can do about it. Well, I mean, there is. We could maybe put some laws and regulations on this thing. We're not going to. The NCAA isn't going to do it. But, it is what it is at this point. It is what it is. But Stedman, so good to see you. So good to see you. Thank you for calling, or thank you for leaving your comment. I want to hear. We'll talk more for sure, no doubt. I think we're getting a call from Ryan. We'll make him the last call of the night. Oh, did we lose him? I know I answered that. I hit 1 to answer. Ryan, sorry, call again, dude. I don't know what just happened. I know we answered. All right, let's try this again. Okay, this should work better this time. Ryan, are you with us?
Yeah, I am, Alex. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely, man. Thanks for calling in. We're happy to have you on.
I'm glad I can be able to make it on with workouts crazy it is, and obviously the time difference. 2 quick things I kind of wanted to pick your brain about. I know you've mentioned a little bit, and I mean, you probably mentioned it with the last kind of comments about the negative impact of NIL. I guess my devil's advocate there is, how do smaller programs be able to compete in the landscape of, D1 FBS football unless they, come up with a ton of money to be able to compete against bigger name schools. like a lot of, like even my USC guys or Ohio State or Oregon or anybody in the two, major conferences. Or, and then my second question really is, and obviously I've talked to you a little bit about being a USC guy. If you were the athletic director of our school, would you, like A&M, cut Riley now and try to restart this as soon as possible, or would you try to save some money and try to ride it out another year or two to see if this can actually work out?
Great question. All right, so the first one, just so I know we're on the same page. So you were saying with the NIL, basically, how are other schools, like especially smaller schools, how are they supposed to compete in this era of NIL against the bigger schools? Is that right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I fully agree with you. I don't know how they can. And the one thing I definitely point to is not just NIL money from the school itself, but these players. We're seeing it. We've already seen it a lot. But if you are a quarterback or a wide receiver, even a kicker, the kicker that plays really well at a small group of 5 program, Miami, Ohio, and Arkansas State, someone like that, and you have a pretty good year. These other big time programs, you mentioned USC, Ohio State, big teams like that, are looking at you and going, hey, come play for us. We'll offer you $500,000, $700,000 to come play for us, which of course is way more than whatever that small school could offer. So all these players are typically leaving because they're following the money. And granted, most people who wouldn't. I think for a lot of us, most of us would leave our job for a significantly higher pay raise at another job. I think most of us would probably do that. But it is wrong to those smaller schools. You're like, look, we recruited this guy. We brought him in here. He's playing really well for us. We obviously want to keep our starting quarterback. We want to keep our kicker who never misses. We can't afford them. And that's simply what it comes down to. It's essentially like free agency. And it's like, we don't have enough money to offer. Ohio State's like, well, yeah, we do. And so the kid leaves. And it's not fair. It really isn't fair. It used to not be like this because bottom line is, my argument would be, if NIL didn't exist, would that star player at Miami, Ohio, would he be transferring to Ohio State? No, he wouldn't. He would stick there and play out his 4 years or whatever. He would not transfer there unless Ohio State approached him and said, hey, please transfer to us, but we're not going to offer you any money, or the opportunity was right. So that is one of the many negative effects of NIL is the fact these smaller schools are getting screwed over, not just from a financial standpoint, but because they're losing their top players because other schools are giving them more money. So that's number one. Number two, with Lincoln Riley, it's a tough. He's not a bad coach, right? I mean, he's got the track record. He was successful at Oklahoma. He's been successful at USC, all things considered, although he did have generational talent with Caleb Williams. And I know last year was a very disappointing season, all things considered. I think you got to give him at least another year. This is the first year in a arguably significantly tougher conference without Caleb Williams, with a new defensive coordinator. I mean, so much change for USC entering this year. And the conference is one of the big ones. The Pac-12 was good last year, but really last year was kind of an anomaly. The years prior to that, there weren't that many elite teams. So it was easy to beat up on, a bad Arizona State team, a bad, even years past Oregon State team. Like USC was able to do that. Now they're playing, the top dogs. You're playing, this year they haven't necessarily done it, but your Oregons and your Ohio States and your Penn States, who they did lose to in narrow fashion. So the schedule is tougher. The travel's tougher. That's another thing I think is taking a toll on them. So I think you got to give Riley at least one more year to get a full year under his belt in the Big Ten, know how to adjust, not from a scheme standpoint, from a travel standpoint, and then hope that next year's better. And then if next year you don't reach those standards, I say you got to let him go. Because if he produces another mediocre 6-7 win season, or even a losing season, which is possible for this year, as you and I both know, that's not acceptable at all for USC.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what the motivation for the things going forward. I don't know if you know, but they made the announcement yesterday that they were going to bench Moss in favor of Alba, which I think at this point in the junction of the season, I think it's a good move to be able to see what you got and, how you can do in a real game situation in, the Big Ten. But, going forward, what is the motivation of the team? Not only obviously recognition going forward, them trying to land transfers and stuff looking into next year, right? Because as the season isn't necessarily over, there is this sense of feeling like you need to, in some ways, look at, what does next year look like? And, I think defense obviously has been better leaps and bounds. Obviously, there's been some inability to finish games, which a lot of people talk about, and rightfully so. But, where is the motivation of the team going forward? And, how does, that translate into what next season looks like? I mean, very defeating, obviously, how, Minnesota game into which I was out there. There was terrible Michigan. It kind of almost was like a replay of the NHL game a couple years ago where to let the guy score instead of stopping inside the 10, we probably get the ball back with a little over a minute. Probably has an opportunity to go win the game. But, I mean, just big picture of, motivation the rest of this season and then obviously going forward next year. I mean, we still can make a bowl game this year, but I think it'll be a very good one. Obviously, you have a chance to ruin Notre Dame's chance to make the CFP to win the finale. But I'm trying to see where their motivation is the rest of this way.
Yeah, and that is such a tough thing for all these teams. When the season doesn't go the way you expect, especially early on, because bottom line is whether they'll admit it or not, the coaches and the players are both reading the preseason expectations. They're listening to the analysts, they're reading the magazines, we're picked first, we're picked second, we're picked. Some of that time, sometimes it's motivation, sometimes it's pressure. But when you realize pretty early on in the year you're not gonna be where you're expected to be, it is hard to mentally get back and say, hey, we might not reach our ultimate goal to win the championship or making this elite bowl game, but there's still a lot to play for. But what that comes down to is coaching. It's Lincoln Riley's job to make sure this team is motivated and is ready to go each and every week. And it's Lincoln Riley's job to say, hey, I know we're not where we want to be, and we've had some heartbreaking losses. We probably should have beat Michigan. We probably should have beat Minnesota. We have a lot of games that we should have won. We're better than what our record shows when you really think about it. So let's get out there, keep playing. It sounds so cliche. Keep playing our hardest, and let's see if we can't get hot, because we've seen that. Well, I think you mentioned it. Obviously there's an opportunity to spoil Notre Dame's season at the end. That's a great opportunity. That's enough motivation as it is. USC could be winless, and if I was a player, I would still get hyped for that Notre Dame game, for that opportunity to ruin my rival's season. So that's motivation enough. But finishing strong, man, momentum, it's a real thing. If they finish the year on a 3-4 game win streak, or maybe even winning 4 of their last 5, they'll lose Notre Dame, I don't know, and then win a bowl game, that's a lot of positive momentum entering 2025 that could help them in the season, as compared to, we talked about earlier, negative momentum like Florida State had. Florida State had a lot of issues outside of how they ended 2023, but losing by 60 points in your bowl game and then proceeding to lose a lot of talent to the portal and the draft has a lot of negative momentum and puts a sour taste in your mouth for the entire offseason, as compared to if the Seminoles had, won their bowl game or finished on a long winning streak. So that's kind of my mindset for USC, at least over the last few weeks of the year.
Yeah, fair enough. I think all your points are very valid. It's one of the things where I know it's not going to happen overnight, and, it's one of the things where Caleb was kind of this quick fix with him and Riley coming when they came over a couple of years ago, and you hoped that, not that you would have expected to, or that I or anybody in our fan base expected to, win the Natty back in 22, but I think the excitement of how one season could have attempted to fix everything, and, you're one game away from being in the CFP, and then you obviously have the, laying it against Utah and Vegas. I think it's one of the things where I think our fan base is itching to be like our glory days again. While I don't mind the grind in order to get back there. It's one of the things where you see how much it seems like teams in either the Big Ten or even the SEC are just able to do it so quickly. I think you're in this race
So trying to, stay competitive in the NIL and coaching landscape and talent acquisition landscape to be able to, stay competitive and, strive to become what essentially Oregon is now. And proud of them, the former Pac-12 member, to be able to, represent the West strong, and hopefully we can get there again soon.
No, man, 100%. I mean, I have nothing against USC, truly, and it's one of those weird things where I think college football is a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fun when USC is up there as an elite program and highly ranked. And it was kind of cool. It was kind of nice to see him back. A couple of years ago, as you mentioned, in that running for a college football playoff spot, for they laid that egg to Utah, as you alluded to. So I still think they've got a great coach in Riley. I still think the opportunity is there to finish strong this year. They've got the money. They've got the NIL money. They've got a decent recruiter in Riley. If they can keep the Anton Lynn as defensive coordinator, the defense I feel like has improved a decent amount. That could be huge going into next year. Retain him, recruit another year. You've got the field, the Big Ten, and I think next year could be significantly better.
I hope so too. Trying to, keep that faith there. Thank you for taking my call and thank you for taking the time to talk about it. I know you don't get a lot of West Coast service. I'm glad that we could be able to talk about that a little bit. I always appreciate your honest.
Hey, appreciate you, Ryan. Thanks for the call, man.
There you go.
All right, that's our last call tonight. Ryan, thank you a lot, man. Appreciate the call. Appreciate all your support. And man, been a huge part of our GE Nation, man. So we really, really appreciate you. Hunter Shin, good to see you catching the tail end of this one, my guy. We're happy to see you. Very tough loss for the Hokies last week. Yeah, that Syracuse game, man. That was wild. That was a great game. One of the most underrated games of the week. We didn't even talk about it in our recap. We had so much to do, but that was kind of those games that flew under the radar. But if you go back and watch it, you go, man, that was a fun game. Fun game. Heartbreaking way to end, but a fun game nonetheless. Just a rough year all around for Virginia Tech, man. I really expected more from them this year. It's been unfortunate, but maybe next year. I don't know. I feel like this was the year with all the talent coming back and as wide open as the ACC felt. I felt this was the year, but still, like we just said with Ryan, opportunity for Virginia Tech to finish strong, carry some momentum into next year, and it's kind of what they did at the end of 2023. Maybe they can do it in 24, and then 25 could be the year they finally break through. Delayed gratification seems to be a theme in college football every single year. It's like, we were supposed to be good in 23, we weren't, but 24, we actually, 2024 season was what we thought 2023 would be, or vice versa. And it's just kind of, it's interesting. It's an interesting way football works sometimes. It's funny how that works, but nonetheless. Guys, we appreciate every single one of you for being here tonight. Another Wednesday night live stream, a successful one at that. Great discussion, not just in the chat, but the guys that called in as well. Ryan, we thank you again for calling in. We are very appreciative of you. Brady as well. Our main comic dude, Brandon, calling in. So Brandon, Brady, and Ryan, we appreciate all of you guys. Everybody in the chat was phenomenal tonight. Stedman, Riley, Scotty B, Hunter Shin, obviously our callers that did call. J-Dog, Doggy, Alex TV, Michigan State fan. Tim Watts was here. I totally missed Tim. But Tim, we appreciate you and your comment as well. He says, don't be surprised with the repeat of 2010. Nevada upsetting Boise State, he says. I remember watching that game. I'm not even lying. I remember watching that game in 2010. I will never forget it. Never forget that Boise State-Nevada game in 2010. The missed field goals at the end, unbelievable. So, and Kellen, the deep bomb, you thought Boise State had it won, and he misses the field goal and just completely shook up the BCS standings. BCS? I mean, God, what a time. What a time to be alive. But Tim, thank you so much, man. We appreciate all of you guys. J-Dog, yes, we're making a video for Colorado and Texas Tech. Comes out on Friday. Tomorrow is Georgia Ole Miss. Friday is Colorado, Texas Tech. And then Sunday, we will be recapping everything that happened in Week 11 as we continue to progress week by week through this season. Austin Pruitt, thank you so much. Jerry Turner, Double O'Neill, who never responded to me about those teams he replaced in the playoff rankings. I'm sure we'll have plenty of debate next Tuesday when the rankings do come out. A lot to talk about there. But guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share the videos. Sign up for the expert picks, 23 away from a 24-hour live stream. Every single subscription counts. Every single one of you counts. And you are a very big part of our GE Nation. So Be the man, help us out, get us to our goal, and we'll be here for 24 hours doing everything college football related. We'd love to have you on board for that, but we got to get to 100 first. And I do believe we can hit it. The extension is all the way to the Super Bowl. We've got till February to hit it. I believe we can. So help us out. Check it out. The link down in the description below. But again, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you next Tuesday night. We'll have updates coming out for our college football playoff live stream or our college football playoff watch party to break down the Week 12 rankings. Good night, everybody.